IS 365-3 provides guidelines for slope mass rating. This systematic evaluation assesses stability for safe design. Reliable ratings lead to better engineering decisions.
Ever look up at a massive highway rock cut and think, what is actually stopping that whole mountain from just collapsing onto my car? Well, you're not alone. In this explainer, we're going to demystify the slope mass rating system and learn exactly how engineers turn raw field data into literal life-saving predictions. We are going to break down the exact mathematical procedures used out in the real world. So imagine standing in the boots of a geotechnical engineer. You're staring up at a 50-foot rock wall, knowing full well that gravity, water, and time are all teaming up to pull it down. How do you objectively measure how safe that rock face is? Well, engineering safety in the natural world absolutely isn't a guessing game. It requires a really systematic approach to evaluate some incredibly complex geological features.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, an intro to slope mass rating. Second, estimating the basic rock mass. Third, rock failure modes. Fourth, joint adjustments. Fifth, excavation adjustments. And finally, calculating the SMR and classification.
Section 1. Intro to Slope Mass Rating. Think of SMR as our ultimate scorecard. Introduced by Ramana back in 1985, it's a highly reliable tool recommended for mapping out landslide hazards. It gives us a really systematic way to evaluate everything, from natural weathering all the way down to how a slope was blasted by construction crews. The real genius of this system is that it takes a widely used baseline for underground rock strength and cleverly tweaks it specifically for the geometry of exposed slopes.
Section 2. Estimating basic rock mass.
Okay, before we can adjust our rating for the slope geometry, we need our foundational score, the Basic Rock Mass Rating, or RMR Basic. We calculate this by adding up the ratings of 5 specific geological parameters we observe in the field. We're looking at the actual compressive strength of the intact rock, the rock quality designation, the spacing of the natural cracks, which we call discontinuities, the physical condition of those cracks, and finally, the groundwater conditions. Now, what's really cool about measuring rock quality designation, or RQD, is how hands-on it is. Engineers literally take a core sample drill out into the rock. Then they isolate and calculate the percentage of solid rock pieces that are over 10 centimeters long. So in this specific example, if we pull pieces measuring 38, 17, 20, and 35 centimeters, that adds up to 110 centimeters of solid rock. We divide that by our total 200 centimeter core run, and boom, that gives us an RQD of 55%. Any tiny pieces or fractures caused by the drill itself, we just ignore those. By referencing the standard RMR tables, we assign a numeric score to each of those 5 parameters. Let's say the slope is bone dry. You earn a very favorable 15 points towards your baseline. But if there's literally flowing water pouring out of the rock face, that score plummets all the way to 0. Similarly, if the cracks have really rough surfaces tightly locked together, you get 30 points. But if those cracks are filled with soft, slippery gouged material, you get 0. We just add these 5 parameters up to get our RMR basic score. Section 3. Recognizing rock failure modes. You know, a rock doesn't just fall randomly. We have to understand the anatomy of its failure to actually predict it. Depending on how the cracks in the rock are angled, the slope is going to fail in one of 3 primary ways. First, it might slide down a single flat plane, like a giant ramp. We call that plane failure. Second, it might squeeze out a V-shaped chunk along 2 intersecting joints. That's a wedge failure. Or third, if the joints dip steeply against the slope, the rock might slowly tip forward like a stack of dominoes, which is a toppling failure. To identify these failure modes in real life, engineers definitely don't just eyeball it. They map out the structural complexity by taking anywhere from 100 to 500 compass readings of the joints. Then they plot these on a stereo net graph, which mathematically unmasks the hidden, dangerous structural patterns inside the mountain. By contouring these plots, they can clearly see the maximum concentrations of pole data, telling them exactly how that specific slope is primed to fail. Section 4. Calculating joint adjustment factors. Once we know how the rock wants to fail, we get to the most mathematical part of the whole procedure, calculating our joint adjustment factors, F1, F2, and F3. Think of F1 as a measure of alignment. It calculates how parallel the angle of the slope face is to the angle of the natural rock joints. Think about it. If the rock's natural joints run perfectly parallel to the cliff face you just cut into, the danger of that whole outer sheet sliding off is incredibly high. It's basically a frictionless trap. So, engineers use a formula to turn this alignment into a multiplier ranging from 0.15 to 1.00. If the angle between the two strikes is less than 5 degrees, that is very unfavorable, and F1 becomes 1.00. But if the angle is greater than 30 degrees, the alignment is way off, which is very favorable. That gives us a much smaller multiplier of 0.15. Let's move to F2. If F1 was alignment, F2 is all about the steepness of the ramp the rock might slide down. It measures the dip angle of the discontinuity, basically giving us the probability of joint shear strength in a planar failure. If that internal joint dips steeply at over 45 degrees, gravity easily takes the wheel, and we get a very unfavorable 1.00 multiplier. However, if that joint is sitting relatively flat at a shallow angle of less than 20 degrees, the rock is just much less likely to slide. That earns a favorable 0.15 multiplier. Interestingly enough, for a toppling or domino failure, gravity is already doing the heavy lifting, so F2 is always just set to 1. All right, F3 is our ultimate reality check. It looks at the relationship between the dip of the discontinuity and the inclination of the overall slope face. This factor heavily penalizes our final score based on how dangerously those natural rock joints interact with the steepness of the slope we've artificially created. Notice a huge difference here. Unlike F1 and F2, which are multipliers, F3 subtracts directly from our total score. If the joints dip perfectly out of the slope face at an angle greater than 10 degrees steeper than the slope itself, we literally subtract a massive 60 points from our rating. That signals a highly unstable condition where the rock is practically being pushed straight out of the wall. Section 5. Adjusting for excavation methods. Now we look at the human element. Leaving a pristine natural slope actually rewards you with plus 15 points to your final score because the rock mass is completely undisturbed. Using careful, precision techniques like pre-splitting gets you a solid plus 10 points. But if a construction crew uses deficient blasting, meaning way too much explosive, terrible detonation timing, or misaligned holes, it actively shatters the internal stability of the rock. That careless work penalizes your final score by 8 points. Section 6. Final SMR and classification. We have our basic rock mass score, our 3 joint adjustment factors, and our excavation impact. It is finally time to pull it all together. Here is the master formula. We take our RMR basic score, we add the calculated product of our 3 joint factors, and finally, we add our excavation factor to reveal the true slope mass rating. By multiplying F1, F2, and F3 together before adding them in, the system mathematically scales the danger. A perfectly parallel joint that is steeply dipping right out of the slope face will multiply out to a massive negative number, which just completely tanks our safety rating. So what does this final score actually mean for us? It directly dictates engineering action. If we run all this math and get an 85, we're in Class I. It's fully stable, grab a coffee, no support is needed. But if our math results in a 30, we're down in Class 4. We're dealing with a highly unstable slope that requires immediate extensive corrective measures. We're talking heavy rock bolts or massive concrete retaining walls just to prevent a landslide. And if it's under 20, completely unstable. You might even have to re-excavate the whole thing. Next time you drive past a massive rock cut on the highway, take a look up and ask yourself, how solid is the invisible math holding that mountain back? Because as we've seen today, engineering safety in the natural world absolutely isn't a guessing game. It is a precise mathematical science. Every single crack, every drop of groundwater, and every blast of dynamite is carefully calculated to ensure that when a mountain is looming over our heads, it stays exactly where it belongs. Thanks for exploring this with me today, and keep questioning the world around you.